There is something powerful about an empath, something rare, something deeply spiritual. An empath walks into a room and people feel calm without understanding why. Strangers open up to them. Broken people cling to them. Confused souls feel safe around them. It is because empaths carry an energy that says, "You can rest here." And while that is beautiful, it is also dangerous when wisdom is missing. Because the same light that comforts good people also exposes you to the wrong ones. Many empaths spend years asking themselves one painful question: why do I keep attracting toxic people? And the answer is deeper than bad luck. It is psychological, emotional, spiritual. You attract what your energy allows access to. Empaths often carry a nurturing spirit. They want to heal. They want to help. They want to understand the pain behind someone's behavior. While others walk away from broken individuals, empaths lean closer. They listen longer. They forgive faster. They give second chance. Yes, when no one else would. But here is the truth most people never tell you. Some people are not looking for love. They are looking for someone to consume. And empaths become easy targets when they confuse compassion with responsibility. A manipulative person studies kindness the way a hunter studies weakness. They notice your patience, your soft heart, your willingness to stay after disrespect. They realize you will try to understand them instead of confronting them. And suddenly your gift becomes the very thing used against you. That is why emotionally unhealthy people are drawn to empaths. Not because empaths are weak, but because they are open. An empath sees potential. A toxic person sees opportunity. Psychology explains this clearly. Many empaths grew up in environments where they had to become emotionally aware very early. Maybe they had unpredictable parents. Maybe they learned to read moods to avoid conflict. Maybe they became caretakers before they even understood the "I own my emotions." So they enter adulthood believing love must be earned through sacrifice. They become addicted to fixing people because somewhere deep inside, they learned their value comes from what they can give, not who they are. And this creates dangerous relationship patterns. The empath keeps pouring. The toxic person keeps taking. The empath keeps hoping. The toxic person keeps draining. The empath says, "If I love them enough, they will change." But healing does not happen because someone loves you harder. Healing happens when a person decides to face themselves. You cannot save people who are committed to destroying their own lives. And one of the hardest lessons an empath must learn is this: not everyone deserves access to your energy. Just because you understand someone's pain does not mean you must tolerate their behavior. Understanding abuse does not require accepting abuse. Compassion should never cost your peace. Some empaths are exhausted today not because are weak, but because they have spent their entire lives giving sacred energy to people who never intended to protect it. You were never created to be an emotional landfill for wounded souls who refuse accountability. You were created to shine, to love wisely, to uplift without losing yourself. And the moment an empath begins to heal, everything changes. They stop chasing broken connections. They stop over-explaining their worth. They stop begging to be valued. They stop confusing attention with love. A healed empath no longer attracts the same people because their energy becomes different, stronger, clearer, more discerning. Toxic people survive through access. Boundaries remove that access. That is why boundaries are not selfish. They are spiritual protection. Every time you say no to disrespect, you say yes to yourself. Every time you walk away from manipulation, you reclaim your power. Every time you stop rescuing people who refuse growth, you create room for healthier connections. And understand this clearly. The right people will never punish you for having standards. Healthy people respect boundaries. Healthy people communicate honestly. Healthy people do not feed on your empathy. They honor it. The wrong people will call you cold the moment you stop overgiving. They will call you selfish because they benefited from your self-neglect. They were comfortable when you abandoned yourself to keep them comfortable. But growth changes you. And when an empath finally realizes their peace is more valuable than being needed, they become unstoppable. Because now they no longer love from desperation. They love from wholeness. There is a difference. One version of you seeks validation through sacrifice. The healed version of you understands your worth without suffering for it. Never forget this. Your empathy is not the problem. Your lack of boundaries was. Your kindness is not weakness. Your inability to walk away was. And your heart was never mean. To become a prison where toxic people live rent-free. Protect your energy. Protect your peace. Protect your soul. Because the strongest empath is not the one who saves everyone. The strongest empath is the one who finally saves themselves. Empaths have a unique emotional presence that many people can feel immediately, even if they cannot explain it with words. There is a warmth in their energy, a calmness in the way they listen, and a depth in the way they make others feel understood. In a world where many people feel ignored, judged, or emotionally disconnected, an empath becomes a safe place. People naturally move toward that kind of energy because emotional safety is rare. When someone feels seen without being criticized, they begin to lower their guard. This is why strangers often open up to empaths within minutes. They sense acceptance. They sense comfort. They sense peace. But this emotional safety can also attract deeply wounded individuals who are searching for relief inside. Of healing. Many emotionally unhealthy people are drawn to empaths because they crave the emotional support they cannot provide for themselves. They may carry unresolved trauma, insecurity, loneliness, or emotional emptiness. When they encounter an empath, it feels like finding water in a desert. The empath listens patiently, gives reassurance, and offers understanding without demanding perfection. For someone who feels emotionally lost, that level of acceptance can become addictive. Psychologically, people are attracted to environments where they feel emotionally regulated. An empath's calming presence often reduces anxiety and emotional tension in others. This creates a powerful attachment, especially in people who struggle internally. The danger is that some individuals do not seek mutual connection, they seek emotional dependence. Instead of healing their wounds, they lean entirely on the empath for stability, comfort, and validation. Over time, the relationship becomes needed. The empath gives energy constantly while the other person only consumes it. Many empaths fail to notice this pattern at first because their compassion is genuine. They believe helping someone is an act of love. They see pain behind bad behavior and choose understanding over distance. But emotional safety without boundaries can invite unhealthy attachment. Some people become attached not because they truly value the empath, but because they value access to the emotional support the empath provides. This is why empaths often feel emotionally exhausted in relationships. They attract people who are starving emotionally, but not everyone who is hurting is ready to grow. Some only want comfort without accountability. The empath becomes the listener, the healer, the emotional caretaker, while their own emotional needs slowly disappear in the background. A healthy relationship allows emotional safety to flow both ways. Both people feel heard, respected, and supported. But when an empath attracts someone emotionally unavailable or manipulative, the relationship becomes centered around one person's pain, while the empath silently carries the emotional weight of both lives. Many empaths grow up believing that love means sacrifice. Somewhere along their journey, they learned that being needed makes them valuable. As a result, they develop a deep emotional desire to heal people who are hurting. They are naturally drawn to broken souls, emotionally distant individuals, and people carrying heavy emotional wounds. Instead of seeing these situations as dangerous, they often see them as opportunities to love deeper, help more, and prove their loyalty. What begins as compassion slowly becomes a trap. An empath does not usually enter a relationship asking, "What can I gain from this person?" They ask, "How can I help this person?" That mindset sounds beautiful, but it becomes destructive when the relationship is one-sided. The empath starts believing their purpose is to rescue others from pain. They tolerate unhealthy behavior because they think patience will heal it. They excuse disrespect because they focus on someone's trauma instead of their actions. They continue giving emotional support long after the relationship becomes emotionally draining. Psychologically, this pattern is often connected to emotional conditioning from childhood. Many empaths were praised for being understanding, helpful, or emotionally mature at a young age. Some had to care for emotionally unstable parents or navigate difficult family environments where keeping peace became necessary. They learned to prioritize other people's emotions before their own. As adults, they unconsciously repeat this dynamic in romantic relationships and friendships. They become caretakers instead of equal partners. This creates dangerous emotional attachments because toxic people quickly recognize someone who struggles to say no. Manipulators often present themselves as wounded, misunderstood, or emotionally damaged because they know empaths feel compelled to help. The empath sees potential and believes love can inspire change. They think if they remain patient enough, supportive enough, or loyal enough, the other person will finally heal and become emotionally available. But many people do not change simply because they are loved deeply. Change requires self-awareness, accountability, and personal responsibility. An empath can support growth, but but they cannot force transformation. When someone refuses to heal themselves, the empath becomes trapped in an endless cycle of giving while receiving very little in return. Over time, the empath begins losing themselves. Their emotional energy becomes consumed by fixing problems that are not theirs to carry. They stop focusing on their own peace, needs, and identity because all their attention goes toward saving someone else. The relationship turns into emotional survival instead of healthy love. Real love does not require you to abandon yourself in order to rescue another person. Healthy relationships are built on mutual effort, mutual healing, and mutual respect. The moment an empath understands they are not responsible for saving everyone, they begin to break free from the emotional trap that has kept them exhausted for so long. Empaths often have hearts that remain open even after disappointment, betrayal, or emotional pain. They believe in giving people chances, listening with compassion, and seeing the good in others. While these qualities are beautiful, they become dangerous when boundaries are weak or non-existent. Empathy without boundaries creates unlimited emotional access, and manipulative people are naturally drawn to that kind of openness. A boundary is not cruelty. A boundary is self-respect. It teaches people how they are allowed to treat you. But many empaths struggle with boundaries because they fear hurting others, being misunderstood, or appearing selfish. They say yes when they want to say no. They tolerate disrespect to avoid conflict. They overextend themselves emotionally because they feel guilty putting their own needs first. In doing so, they unknowingly teach toxic people that their behavior will continue to be accepted. Psychologically, manipulators are highly observant. They pay attention to emotional reactions, emotional weaknesses, and patterns of behavior. When they meet someone who constantly gives second chances, avoids confrontation, and prioritizes everyone else's feelings, they recognize an opportunity. They understand that an empath's kindness can be exploited. The manipulator begins pushing limits slowly, testing how much they can take before the empath finally reacts. At first, the behavior may seem small. Ignored messages, broken promises, emotional inconsistency, disrespect disguised as jokes. But because empaths naturally search for understanding, they often excuse these behaviors. They tell themselves the person is stressed, wounded, confused, or struggling, i.e. emotionally. Instead of protecting themselves early, they continue investing emotionally, hoping things will improve. This is exactly why toxic personalities are attracted to weak boundaries. Boundaries create consequences, and manipulators dislike consequences. They prefer relationships where accountability is low and emotional access is unlimited. An empath without boundaries becomes emotionally available at all times, even for people who continually drain them. Over time, the empath starts carrying emotional burdens that were never theirs to hold. They become exhausted from overgiving, over-explaining, and over-compromising. Meanwhile, the manipulative person becomes more comfortable taking without giving equally in return. The relationship slowly shifts from connection to control. One of the hardest lessons an empath must learn is that being understanding does not require tolerating harmful behavior. You can love people and still limit their access to your life. You can care deeply and still walk away from disrespect. Healthy boundaries protect empathy from becoming self-destruction. The moment an empath develops strong boundaries, everything changes. Toxic people often lose interest because they can no longer control the relationship. The empath stops feeling responsible for everyone's emotions and starts protecting their peace. Instead of attracting people who only want to take, they begin attracting healthier individuals who respect emotional balance, honesty, and mutual care. Empaths have a powerful ability to see beyond a person's current behavior. They notice hidden pain, buried insecurity, and emotional wounds that most people overlook. While others focus on what someone is doing in the present, empaths focus on who that person could become in the future. They see potential where others see danger. They imagine healing where others recognize dysfunction. This is one of the reasons empaths often stay in unhealthy relationships far longer than they should. When red flags appear, empaths tend to explain them away instead of accepting them as warnings. They notice dishonesty but convince themselves the person is just afraid of vulnerability. They notice emotional inconsistency but assume the person has trust issues from the past. They notice disrespect but focus on the moments of kindness instead. Their deep emotional understanding becomes a filter that softens reality. Instead of seeing patterns clearly, they become emotionally attached to possibilities. Psychologically, this happens because empaths are naturally future-focused in relationships. They invest emotionally in who someone might become rather than who that person consistently shows themselves to be. This creates emotional blindness. They start loving potential instead of reality. They become attached to promises, temporary improvements, and imagined transformations. A toxic person may occasionally show affection, apologize, or express vulnerability, and the empath interpreter read those moments as proof that real change is coming, but potential is not the same as character. A person's true character is revealed through repeated actions, not emotional speeches or temporary emotional moments. Someone can have painful childhood experiences and still choose unhealthy behavior. Someone can struggle emotionally and still be unwilling to change. Empaths often understand the reasons behind harmful behavior so deeply that they forget to ask the most important question. Is this relationship healthy for me? This pattern becomes emotionally exhausting because the empath keeps waiting for a version of the person that never fully arrives. They stay loyal to hope while ignoring reality. They remember the good moments and minimize the painful ones. They become emotionally attached to the idea that their love, patience, and support will eventually unlock the best version of the other person. Meanwhile, the red flags continue growing stronger. Emotional manipulation becomes normal. Inconsistency becomes routine. Disrespect becomes repeated. Yet the empath continues holding on to the belief that things will improve if they just love harder or wait longer. One painful truth many empaths eventually learn is that seeing goodness in someone does not mean that goodness is strong enough to build a healthy relationship. Potential means nothing without effort, accountability, and consistent action. Healthy love is not built on fantasies of who someone might become someday. It is built on who they consistently choose to be today. The moment an empath learns to value reality over imagined potential, they begin protecting themselves from relationships that drain their spirit and delay their healing. Many empaths do not realize that their relationship patterns often began long before adulthood. The way they love, the way they tolerate emotional pain, and the way they constantly prioritize others usually comes from experiences formed early in life. Childhood condition. Conditioning has a powerful influence on how people connect emotionally as adults. For many empaths, love was not experienced as something safe and balanced. Instead, it was something that had to be earned through emotional caretaking, sacrifice, or people-pleasing. Some empaths grew up in homes where emotions were unpredictable. They may have had emotionally unavailable parents, controlling family members, or environments filled with tension and instability. In those situations, they learned to become highly sensitive to the emotions of others. They became experts at reading moods, avoiding conflict, and keeping peace inside the home. As children, this emotional awareness helped them survive emotionally. But as adults, the same pattern can lead them into unhealthy relationships. Psychologically, children adapt to whatever environment they are raised in. If love was inconsistent, they may grow up chasing emotional validation. If affection only appeared when they performed well or pleased others, they may begin associating love with self-sacrifice. If they were ignored emotionally, they may become adults who overgive in hopes of finally feeling valued and chosen. This is why many empaths feel responsible for other people's happiness. Deep inside, they fear rejection, abandonment, or emotional disconnection. So they overcompensate by becoming overly understanding, overly forgiving, and overly available. They believe that if they love hard enough, they will finally receive the security they always wanted emotionally. Unfortunately, toxic people are often drawn to this pattern because it benefits them. An empath conditioned to tolerate emotional imbalance becomes easier to manipulate. They stay loyal during mistreatment because emotional struggle feels familiar to them. Chaos feels normal. Emotional inconsistency feels strangely comfortable because it mirrors the emotional environments they experienced growing up. This is also why many empaths ignore their own emotions. Needs. As children, they may have learned that their feelings came second to everyone else's. So as adults, they continue abandoning themselves in relationships. They focus entirely on fixing, supporting, and understanding others, while silently neglecting their own emotional well-being. Healing begins when the empath recognizes these patterns instead of repeating them unconsciously. Self-awareness changes everything. Once they understand that their desire to overgive was shaped by past conditioning, they stop blaming themselves for attracting unhealthy relationships. They begin learning healthier emotional habits rooted in self-respect rather than fear. The empath who heals their childhood wounds no longer seeks love through suffering or sacrifice. They stop believing they must earn affection by exhausting themselves emotionally. Instead, they begin choosing relationships where love feels peaceful, mutual, stable, and emotionally safe, rather than emotionally draining. The greatest transformation in an empath's life begins the moment they stop abandoning themselves to keep others comfortable. For so long, many empaths believe their purpose is to help, rescue, and emotionally support everyone around them. They become so focused on being needed that they forget what it feels like to protect their own peace. But eventually, exhaustion forces a deeper realization. Constantly saving others while neglecting yourself is not love. It is self-destruction disguised as compassion. True healing starts when an empath finally chooses themselves without guilt. This does not mean becoming cold, selfish, or emotionally unavailable. It means understanding that your energy is valuable and not everyone deserves unlimited access to it. It means realizing that protecting your peace is just as important as caring for others. Psychologically, this shift changes everything about the empath's emotional patterns. Instead of seeking validation through sacrifice, they begin developing self-worth from within. They stop measuring their value by how much they can give or how much pain they can endure for someone else. They no longer feel responsible for fixing broken people who refuse to heal themselves. This internal change creates a completely different energy. Toxic people are often attracted to emotional overgivers because they rely on weak boundaries and emotional dependency. But when an empath heals, they stop reacting the same way. They no longer chase emotionally unavailable people. They no longer tolerate manipulation in the name of understanding. They no longer stay in situations that constantly drain their spirit. A healed empath begins paying attention to actions instead of excuses. They stop falling in love with potential and start valuing consistency, honesty, and emotional maturity. They become more selective with who enters their emotional space. They understand that not every connection is meant to be saved. One of the most powerful changes happens when the empath learns to say no without feeling guilty. They stop over-explaining themselves. They stop apologizing for having standards. They stop shrinking their needs to avoid disappointing others. Instead, they begin honoring their emotions, trusting their intuition, and walking away from relationships that disturb their peace. As this healing grows, unhealthy people naturally lose access to them. Manipulators often depend on emotional confusion and overgiving to maintain control. But healed empaths become emotionally clear. They recognize red flags earlier. They trust patterns instead of empty promises. Their calmness becomes strength instead of vulnerability. And suddenly, the empath who once attracted draining relationships begins attracting healthier connections. Why? Because their standards changed, their boundaries changed, their self-respect changed. The healed empath no longer seeks relationships to feel worthy. They already know their worth. And that confidence creates a powerful emotional shift. People who once took advantage of them now find them unreachable because the empath has finally learned one life-changing truth. Choosing yourself is not selfish when your soul has been starving for peace. In the end, being an empath is not a weakness, it is a gift. But a gift without wisdom can become a burden. The world will always contain people who are drawn to light for the wrong reasons, but your journey is not about losing your kindness. It is about learning where your kindness belongs. Stop chasing people who only value your healing while ignoring your heart. Stop sacrificing your peace to prove your love. The moment you choose self-respect over emotional exhaustion, your entire life begins to change. Protect your energy, honor your worth, and remember this. The right people will never require you to lose yourself in order to keep them. Your empathy was meant to inspire, not destroy you. Thank you all for listening and sharing this moment of growth and reference. Lection. May you leave with stronger boundaries, deeper self-worth, and the courage to protect the peace within your soul. Keep growing, keep healing, and never forget that your light is valuable. As you move forward in life, remember that your empathy is not something to be ashamed of. It is one of the rarest strengths a human being can carry. But strength without discernment can attract pain. You were never meant to carry everyone's burdens while neglecting your own soul. The wrong people may be drawn to your light, but it is your responsibility to decide who gets access to it. Choose relationships that bring peace instead of confusion, honesty instead of manipulation, and mutual care instead of emotional exhaustion. The moment an empath learns to value themselves, protect their energy, and walk away from what drains them, they step into a new level of freedom, healing, and purpose. Thank you all for being here and opening your hearts to this message. May you continue growing into the strongest, wisest, and most peaceful version of yourself. Protect your light, trust your intuition, and never settle for relationships that make you forget your worth. Stay blessed, stay strong, and keep moving forward with courage and purpose.